Good morning at Shabbos. Tumbala, tumbala, tumbala like a tumbala, tumbala, tumbala like a tumbala like a spielbala like a tumbala like a Freilich sein. Shabbos is a time to be kind. Shabbos is a time for heart and mind. Shabbos is a time for love. Shabbos is a time to remember God above. Tumbala, tumbala, tumbala like a tumbala, tumbala, tumbala like a tumbala like a spielbala like a tumbala like a Freilich sein. Once more, Shabbos is a time to be kind. Shabbos is a time for heart and mind. Shabbos is a time for love. Shabbos is a time to remember God above. Tumbala, tumbala, tumbala like a tumbala, tumbala, tumbala like a tumbala like a spielbala like a tumbala like a Freilich soll sein. Freilich means let's be happy together. And now, if you have your tallis, you're invited to join me. If not, well, maybe you'll consider getting a tallis. A tallis is a way of being enfolded in an embrace of 3,000 years, an embrace of mitzvot, Jewish obligations that connect us to God and humanity, an embrace touched by God, an embrace of ancestors whom you and I never met. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu litatei b'tzitzit. And we'll begin this morning with the Matovu. Perhaps you have a Siddur at home, and if you don't yet have a Siddur at home, I invite you to obtain one. If you have any questions as to how, please just contact me. Matov is on page 101. Page 101. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael, vani berov chastecha, albo beitecha. Eshtachave, eshtachave, elhecha, kodshecha, be'yiratecha. Adonai ahavti ma'on beitecha, u'makom mishkan kavodecha. V'ani eshtachave v'yachra, hebrecha lifnei Adonai osi. Vani tefilati lecha Adonai et ratzon Elohim berov chastecha aneni b'medishecha. We rise now the early morning blessings known as Birchot HaShachar on pages 103 and 104. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lasech v'ivina lahavchin ben yomu vein laila. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'asani b'tzalmo. You might say Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Shasani ben Chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Shasani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Pokeach Ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Malbish Arumim. Page 104. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rokal haaretz al hamoyim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Hamechin mitzadei gover. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech olam sha'asa likol tzarki. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech olam Ozer Yisrael bigvuro. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech olam Oter Yisrael b'tif'ara. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech olam Hanotein le'if koach. Today and every day, may you look upon us, and may all who see us look upon us with eyes filled with kindness, love, and compassion. Act toward us with kindly love. Unenu hayom uvachol yom l'cheinu chesed rachamim benecha u'nechoro v'nevitik malenu chasadim tovim. Baruch Adonai Gomel Chasadim Tovim Mo Yisrael. At this point, we may be seated. The psalm for Shabbat is on page 112. Mizmor shir liyom HaShabbat Tov lehodot l'Adonai Olezamer l'shimcha elyon Olezamer l'shimcha elyon Lahagid baboker chasdecha Ve'emunatcha balelot Alei asor v'alei novel Alei higayon bechinor Mizmor shir liyom HaShabbat Tov lehodot l'Adonai Ulezamer l'shimcha elyon Ulezamer l'shimcha elyon Ki simachthani b'falecha B'maaseh yodecha aranein Magalu maasecha Adonai Ma'od amku machshavotecha Mizmor shir liyom HaShabbat Tov lehodot l'Adonai Ulezamer l'shimcha elyon Ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. How wonderful are your works, Adonai! How subtle your designs! The arrogant do not understand. The fool does not comprehend this. The wicked flourish like grass, and every evildoer blossoms, only to be destroyed forever. But you, Adonai, are exalted for all time. Surely your enemies, Adonai, surely your enemies will perish. All who commit evil will be scattered. As a wild bull raises up its horn, you raised my head high. You anointed my head with fresh oil. My enemies gather against me. My gaze remains steady, for my ears listen and hear. The righteous flourish like the date palm, thrive like a cedar in Lebanon, planted in the house of Adonai. They flourish in our God's courtyards. The last stands on the Hebrew side. Tzadik katama yifrach k'erez balvanon yizke shetulim beveit Adonai bechatzrot Eloheinu yofrichu od yenuvon besevam Disheni verananim yiyu lehagid ki yashar Adonai tzuri v'lo avlatobo. And now Baruch Shamar on page 122. Baruch Shamar v'haya ha'olam Baruch hu Baruch oseh v'reshit Baruch omer v'oseh Baruch gozer umekayem Baruch merachem al haaretz. Baruch merachem al habriot. Baruch mishalem sachar tov lireov. Baruch chai Lord v'kayom lo netzach. Baruch podeh umatzil. Baruch Shemo. We will celebrate you, Adonai, our God, with praise and song. We will extol, acclaim, and glorify you, honoring your name and declaring that you are our sovereign God, the singular one who gives life to the world, the sovereign who is praised and glorified forever and ever. This is your great name. Baruch atah Adonai, sovereign, celebrated with songs of praise. Yachid Cheho Lamim Melech Mishbachim Far Adei Ad Shemo HaGadol Baruch Ataroi Melech Mulabati Shbachot. On page 129. This first little stanza on the left-hand side and the left margin is on my mind because today in the Torah reading we are introduced to Moshe. And of course Moses stands out from all of our history in a preeminent manner. And looking at the upper left corner on page 129, some say, why was Moses called a man of God? Because he was able to transform God's judgment into God's compassion. And what's striking with this little midrash is that we're not speaking about Moses who faced up against Pharaoh. We're not speaking about Moses who was a man who brought miracles into the world. We're not speaking about Moses who guided people through a sea and through a wilderness. We're speaking about Moses, according to this midrash, as a man who has the capacity to promote compassion and kindness. In this narrow little context within God, but let's broaden it for our own purposes. What would be the greatest event possible for you and me to stand at Sinai or to cross a wilderness or to ford a river? Taking hold of this midrash, the greatest possibility for you and me is to bring kindness and compassion into the world by unlocking something within someone else. And each one of us has that capacity based upon our relationships and hopefully our own patience. I'm just smiling at the moment, just thinking about the capacity for hundreds of members of Ahavas Chesed and beyond, each one to become a person of God. Just imagine that. The Ashrei on page 136. Ashrei Yashvei Veitecha Hod Yalucha Selon Ashreiham Shekachalo Ashreiham Sharanoi Elohov Tehillah David Aromim Chalohai HaMelech Ba'avarcha Shimcha Leolam Voed B'chol Yom Avarcheka Va'ahalala Shimcha Leolam Voed Gadol Adonai Molal Mod V'lig Dulato Ein Cheker Dor Lador Yishabach Masecha Ugvuratecha Yagidu Hadar Kavod Hodecha V'divrei Niflotecha Asicha Ve'ezuz Norotecha Yomeru Ugedulatcha Asapreno Zecherav Tuvacha Yabiu V'tzid Katacha Yeranenu Chanun Rachum Adonai Erech Alpayim Ugdol Chesed Tov Adonai Lakol V'chamov Al Kol Ma'asov Yoducha Adonai Kol Ma'asecha V'chasidecha Yivarchucha Kavod malchutcha yomero, u'gvoratcha yidaberu. Lodia livnei hadam gvurotav, uchavod hadar malchuto, malchutcha malchut kol olamim, umem shaltecha b'chol dor vador. Somech Adonai l'chol hanoflim, v'zokef l'chol hakfufim. Einei chol elecha yisabero, v'yata noten lahem et achlam bi'ito. Poteach et yadecha, umaspia l'chol charatzon, tzadik Adonai b'chol drachov, v'chasid b'chol ma'asav, karov Adonai l'chol korov, l'chol asher kruhu v'emet, ritzon yireyav ya'aseh, v'yet shavatam yishma v'yoshiem, shomer Adonai et kol ohavav, v'yet kol harshaim yashmid, Tilat Adonai daber pi, v'vorech kol basar shem kadsho li'olam va'ed, v'anachnu nevarech yah me'ata v'yad olam, hallelujah. Page 141, the top stanza, page 141. Hallelujah, el bekodsho, hallelujah, birkia uzo, hallelujah, vigvurotav, hallelujah, kerov gulo, hallelujah, beteka shofar, hallelujah, benevel v'chinor, hallelujah, betofu machol, hallelujah, b'minim yugav, hallelujah, hallelujah, Betzil tzalei shama, hallelujah, hallelujah, Betzil tzalei troa, kol anshama te hallelujah, 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 kol anshama te hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. And now we turn to page 145. It's a song, a poem where we're singing as a reminder of the need to be appreciative that every person on this planet is the embodiment of a soul. Jews have a poem which we sing as a reminder that every person embodies a soul. Pause and consider that for a few moments, what that means to sing about every person's embodying a soul on the face of this earth. And now you understand the depth, the profundity of Jewish tradition. Nishmat kol chai tevarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu v'ruach kol basar tifarer tumim tzuklim rimim v'nol madal matbarel v'nol mashriach ein l'nolad al hey hamatir asurim hasomek noflim zogik kufil The top of page 147, the little red arrow, Shochenad. Shochenan Marom V'kadosh Shemo V'chatuv Raneno Tzadikim Baronoi Laisharim Nava Tehillah B'fi Yesharim Tit Halal Uv'divrei Tzadikim Tit Barach Uv'shon Chasidim Tit Ramam Uv'kerev Kedoshim Tit Kadash Uv'makalot Rivavot Amcha Beit Yisrael Lodo lahalel l'shabech lefaer l'romeim lahader l'vrech laleu kales al kol yishur v'tish b'chot David ben Yishai Abdecha Meshichecha. The top of 148, Yishtabach 148. Yishtabach Shimcha Lo Malkeinu Ha'el HaMelech Hagadol v'Hakadosh b'Shamayim u'ba'aretz Ki lecha no'eh Adonai Eloheinu v'Avoteinu v'Imotenu Shir u'shvacha Halel v'Zimra Ozu Memshala Netzach Gedula u'Gvura Tila v'Tiferet Kiddusha u'Malchut Brachot v'Arot Me'ata v'Ad Olam Baruch atah Adonai El Melech Gadol b'Tishbachot El Odot Adonai Niflot Habocher b'Shirei Zimra Melech Elchei Olamim. The last sentence praises God for creating the universe, and we rise now, page 150, that first opening bracha of the main service, reminding us that light and dark, the vastness of the universe, were all brought into being so that you and I might enjoy and take part in and live and embrace reality. There's a Hasidic teaching that says that when you get up every morning, say, the world, the universe was created for me. So the momentum of that is, how will you and I interact in the world? What will we do with our energy and our capacity to act upon the universe created for us? The top of page 150. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or vorech choshech oseh shalom uvarei et hakol. Baruch atah Adonai, our God, sovereign of time and space, forming light and creating darkness, bringing harmony while creating all. And we were seated on page 151. Ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 hey ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 El Adon al kol hamaasim baruch umvarach b'fi kol neshama gadol v'tuva Malay olam dat utvuna sovavi moto hamit gael chayot hakodesh v'ner avachavod ala merkava zachot umishor livnei chiso chesed v'rachamim livnei chvodo tovim ma'orot shebara el Eloheinu Yitzaram B'dat B'vina Uvaskel Koach Ugvura Hanatan Bahem Liot Moshlim Bekerev Tevel Mleim Ziv Fikim Noga Noeziv Amachololam Smechim B'tzeitam V'sasim Avoam Osim Biema Ritzon Konam Pe'er V'chavod Notnim Lishmo Tzahalavarina Lezechem Alchuto Kara L'Shemesh Vayizrach Ora V'hitkin Surat Halvana Shevach Notnim Lo Kol Tzava Maram Tiveret Ugadula Serafim V'opanim V'chayot HaKodesh Yada da 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 Yada da 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 Yada da 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 Yada da 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 Yada da 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 Yada da 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 Yada da 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 da. The whole world reflects the beauty and glory of God. The whole world is an expression of the creativity, the magnificence of God. And here, this poem on page 151 speaks of lights and the elements in reality, but also there's a hint to something of the celestial, the angelic retinue or entourage of God. And that comes forth here, and it's expressed a bit more directly here on pages 153 on the Hebrew and the English side. Glowing sparks of creation beyond creation. That might be one way of understanding angels. So here we are on page 153, and it's in the center of the page on the English side. Each turns to another as they proclaim their loyalty to God, and each gives permission to the other to hallow their Creator in a clear voice. And with sacred speech, together as one, they respond with awe, saying, Holy, holy, holy is Adonai Tzvaot. The whole world is filled with God's glory. And we can sing, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Moloch Loretz Kvodo. With a deafening sound, the Ophanim and other holy beings rise up opposite the Seraphim, and they proclaim their praise. Praise is Adonai's glory wherever God dwells. Baruch Kavod Adonai Mim Kamo. The Ophanim, the Seraphim, the Arelim, all these elements that are described later in a variety of books of tradition known as mystical contemplation are trying to give expression to how can you and I limit the reality that gave birth to all reality? Why would you even consider that God is only like this? You must let your imagination go beyond every aspect and every limitation, and then the next day let it go even further. That is a way of approaching God. Very last line. Or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir, or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir, or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir, or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir. V'nizka cholanu mehera leoro. V'nizka cholanu mehera leoro. Baruch atah Adonai Yotzer Hamorot. The top of page 154, the first English paragraph followed by the Hebrew paragraph near the bottom of the page. You have loved us deeply, Adonai our God, and showered us with boundless compassion. Avinu Malkeinu, for the sake of our ancestors who trusted in you, and to whom you taught the laws of life, so may you be gracious to us and instruct us. Kind Creator, have compassion for us. Open our hearts so that we may understand, and with love discern, hear, and study. Observe, perform, and fulfill all the teachings of your Torah with love. Enlighten our eyes with your Torah. Attach our hearts to your mitzvot. Unify our hearts to love and revere your name so that we never lose hope. As we trust in your great, holy, awe-inspiring name, we will delight and rejoice in your deliverance. If you have a talit, you gather the four corners together at this time as a physical expression of reaching out to Jewish people all over the world and bringing Jewish people together. So we can say the Shema together. The bottom of 154. V'havienu l'shalom me'arba kanfot haaretz v'tolichenu komemiyot le'artzenu ki el po'el yeshuot ata ufanu v'charta mikolam b'lashon v'kerafta l'shimcha hagadol sela be'emet lahodot lecha ol yachercha ba'ahava Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'ma Yisrael be'ahava. 155. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Ve'avto et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol me'odecha v'hayo hadavarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'vetecha v'lechtecha v'derech v'shachbecha v'kumecha v'kishartam la'ot al yadecha v'hayu l'totafot b'neinecha v'ktavtam al mezuzot betecha v'visharecha. A moment of silence at the top of 156. The third paragraph of the Shema, the middle on page 156. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor taber el bnei Yisrael v'marta lehem v'yasu lehem tzitzit al kanfei v'gedehem l'dorotam v'natnu al tzitzit hakanaf b'til techelet v'yolachem l'tzitzit Uritem oto, uschartem et kol mitzvot Adonai, vasitem otam, v'lo acharei levavchem yacharei enechem, asher atem zonim achareihem. Laman tizkaru, vasitem et kol mitzvotai, v'item keroshim le'elohechem, ani Elohechem, asher otzeiti etchem meretz Mitzrayim, liot lachem le'elohim, ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem emet. On page 158. The first stanza at the top of page 158. Adonai our God, you redeemed us from Egypt and freed us from the house of bondage. Their firstborn you slayed, your firstborn you redeemed. You split the sea, you drowned the wicked. You rescued your cherished ones. The waters engulfed their oppressors. Not one of them survived. Then your beloved sang in praise, acclaiming God for all that had occurred. That's the origin of the Micha Mocha. So we see ourselves, when we sing the Micha Mocha every morning and every evening of the entire year, as having been escorted by God through the sea and having an opportunity of establishing a new reality of freedom. Twice a day we teach ourselves to establish a course of moving forward to create a new reality of freedom. Twice a day. The first red arrow, page 158. Tehilot le'el elyon, baruch hu mevorach, Moshe u'Miriam u'bnei Yisrael, lecha anu shira, b'simcha rabah v'yamru chulam, mi chamocha, bo'elim Adonai, mi kamocha, nedar b'kodesh, norati lot, ol seifele, Shira Chadasha, Shibchu Geulim, Lashimcha Asafat Hayam, Yachad Kulam, Hoduvim Nechuv Yamro, Adonai Yimloch Leolam Boed, Tzur Yisrael, Kuma Be'ezrat Yisrael, Uvadei Chinumecha, Yehuda Yisrael, go aleinu, Adonai tzvot shemo, Kadosh Yisrael. We rise now. The immediate begins on page 159 and 160. 159 and 160, singing, chanting aloud together, and then an opportunity for us to offer a silent prayer. It concludes on page 166. 159 and 160 aloud together, a few moments of silence until 166, or fashioning a private prayer. Baruch ato Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor V'Anora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei HaKol, V'Zocher Chastei Avot V'Imahot, U'Mevi Goel Livnei V'Neihem, L'man Shemo B'Ahava, Melech Ozer U'Foked U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch ato Adonai, Magen Avraham Ufoked Sarah. Atagi bor leolam Adonai, Mechaye meitim ata Rav Lohoshia. Mashiv haruach u'morit hagashem, mechalkel chayim bechesed, mechaye meitim berachamim rabim, sameg noflim verofech olim, o matir asurim, o mekayem emunato, lishenei afar, mechamocha bagevurot, o medam Melach, Melech Meimit, O Mechaye, O Matzmeach Yeshua, V'nemon Atalachayot Meitim, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mechaye HaMeitim. In a moment, we open the Ark on page 168. And when the Ark is open, we rise because we're about to take the Torah out of the Ark. On page 168 of Ahibin Soah. Vayehi bin Soah Haron, Vayomer Moshe, Kuma Adonai, Veyafutzu oyevecha, Veyanusu misanecha, Vipanecha, Ki mitzion tetze Torah, Ki mitzion tetze Torah, Udavar Adonai, Mirushalayim, Baruch Shenatan, Torah, Torah, Baruch Shenatan, Torah, Torah, La'amo Yisrael, B'kedushato. Turning to page 170. The bottom English stanza and then Be'ana Rachetz. It is in God that I put my trust, and it is to your holy and precious name that I utter praise. May it be your will that you open my heart to your Torah, and that you fulfill the desires of my heart and the hearts of all your people Israel, for goodness, for life, and for peace. Amen. Be'ana Rachetz, V'lishme Kadisha, Kadisha Yakira, Ana Emar Tushbechan. Be'ana Rachetz, Be'ana Rachetz, V'lishme Kadisha, Kadisha Yakira, Ana Emar Tushbechan. Yeher Avakadamach, Dotiftach Libi B'yoraita, V'tashli Mish'alin Delibi, V'liba Dechol Amach Yisrael, L'tavo L'chayin, V'lishlam. Amen. Page 171. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu Gadol, Adonai Kadosh Shemo. Gadol Adonai Tin Ramamash Moyachtav, Lacha Adonai Hagadol V'Hagavora Batiferet V'Hanetzach V'Hahod Kicho Bashamayim Uvaretz, Kicho Bashamayim Uvaretz, Adonai Hamamlocha V'Minaseh L'chol Rosh, Ramemo, Ramemo, Adonai Eloheinu, V'hishtachavu, V'hishtachavu, L'hadam Raglav Kadoshu, Ramemo, Ramemo, Adonai Eloheinu, ve'ishtachavu, ve'ishtachavu, lehar kodsho, ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. We are seated. The Torah reading for today is in Parshat Shemot, and you might turn, if you have the Chumash, to page 314, which is the end of last week's Torah service. Pardon me. And you see before you on page 314 prime, because it's not numbered, but to the left of page 314, you see what I call a table of contents, reminding us that the book of Shemot, which in English is called Exodus, is a volume consisting of a number of parshiot, Shemot, Va'era, Bo, Bishalach, Yitro, Mishpatim, Teruma, Tetzaveh, Kitisa, Ve'akal, Pekudei, 2, 4, 6, 8, 11 Torah readings, 11 parshiot weekly Torah portions in the book of Shemot. And, of course, the book of Shemot reminds us that Jewish life is moving forward. All of Breshit is a series of beginnings. It's a beginning of the world. It's a beginning of individuals. It's a beginning of humanity, a beginning of life, and then a beginning of families. And Jewish history begins through the introduction of individuals and then a family. And that's how Breshit ends last week. We were familiar with, of course, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. We remember that Yaakov had 12 sons who eventually came to be in Egypt as Joseph as the viceroy, and they grew into clans and then tribes. But Shemot, which is the beginning of our identity as a nation, has an entirely different focus. Breshit is, as I said, a beginnings of life, individuals, families, and the world. Shemot is the beginning of a nation. And it's a very striking beginning, for the nation of Israel begins, unfortunately, as an abused and oppressed and enslaved community. That's the foundational element of the nation of Israel. And it's a curious foundation. We might expect, wouldn't it be great if God had decided or constructed or history had flowed in a certain way, and the nation was standing at Mount Sinai, and that would be the beginning of the nation. Or the nation would enter the land, and that would be the beginning of the nation. That would make sense. But why would a nation see its beginning as one which emerges from being abused and enslaved? It's a very challenging experience. And of course, I can't explain, but I have a perspective or an idea. We all know that slavery is bad. Abuse and oppression is rotten. It's terrible, it's mean, it's cruel, it's vicious, it's stinky. So at our very beginning as a nation, we experience these terrors, these violations. And now, in just 3 Torah readings as we begin the Exodus itself, and of course we observe the holiday of Passover in the spring, we will ever take with us every single day of history which unfolds after the time of Moses, in awareness of the violation and the abhorrence of slavery and abuse. That will be part of our DNA as individuals and as a historic community, a community living in history, to always appreciate the need for respecting individuals and communities alike. And we recite the Michamocha twice every single day, reminding us of getting out of slavery and crossing the sea and beginning a whole new reality. And you know how important the holiday of Passover is. Time and again, every single day. It is unavoidable as a Jew to accept, to stand by slavery and cruelty. It is unacceptable. We have to stand up against it. That may be why the beginning of a nation is described this way, starting with Shemot. The reading for today is, pardon me, found in the Chumash on page number 335. If you don't have a Chumash at home, we're in chapter number 4 of the book of Exodus. It's page 335, verses 18, 19, and 20. And a small reading of the Torah in the Hebrew. And then I wish to share another thought with you. It begins with Vayelech Moshe. Vayelech Moshe v'shva yitrechono v'imrlo el chana v'shuva el achai asher b'mitzrayim v'ara haodam chayim v'yomer yitro l'Moshe lech le'shalom v'ymerno el Moshe b'midyan lech shuv mitzrayim ki metu kol anashim hamavakshim et nafshecha v'yikav Moshe ishto v'et banav v'kivei malach hamor v'shorat Mitzrayim, v'yikach Moshe matelim biyado. You remember that when Moses fled from Egypt, he eventually came to Midian, which is probably somewhere between southern Jordan and northern Saudi Arabia. And he met a woman, and they married. Her name is Tzipporah, and they have 2 sons. And he's welcomed very warmly into Tzipporah's life. And we know of what we would call a close relationship between Moses and his father-in-law, Yitro, in English pronounced Jethro. And the Torah does not describe how long Moses is living in Midian with Yitro, with Jethro, but it seems to be a significant amount of time. So Moses is married. He has a wife and 2 kids. He's involved in a warm and close relationship with his father-in-law. You could say that he's got everything that he needs. He's got, the wife, the kids, the picket fence, all is good. And yet he knows that he has to go back to Egypt. He's got a relationship with and a bond to people in need, people who are suffering. And he encounters God slightly earlier than where we are right now at what we call the burning bush, and he knows he has to go back to Egypt. He's a grown-up. He's married. He's got 2 kids. But what's striking here in this sentence that we just read on page 335 is that, verse 18, Moshe asks permission of his father-in-law to leave. Moses asks permission of his father-in-law to leave where he is, to go back to Egypt. He could have just left. He could have said, I had an encounter with God. I saw the burning bush. I need to go. The voice of God outside of me and inside, my conscience telling me I've got to go help my people. He asks for permission. And that, I think, is another indicator of the kind of person that Moshe is. That he realizes that his relationships in the here and the now are also part of his responsibility. So in order to care for his extended community, the nation, first he's got to exhibit respect and responsibility of and for his family. So he asks permission of his father-in-law to go. And the father-in-law says, Lech l'shalom, which means go in peace. So he's granted permission and he leaves Midian. Most Jewish people don't recognize the name Midian or Midian, which is an ancient name from some foreign society. It's out there in the middle of who knows where. Again, we think it's somewhere between northern Saudi Arabia and southern Jordan. So it's way off. It's not Miami Beach, it's not Toledo, it's not Chicago, it's not a Jewish neighborhood. Moses is by himself as he's about to leave this out of the way place to go back to Egypt. And look at this next line. It's on page 335. It's verse number 20. Moses took his wife and sons, mounted them on a donkey, went back to the land of Egypt. And look at this. And Moses took the rod, the walking staff of God with him. And I find that absolutely captivating, that in the middle of who the heck knows where he is, nowhere, surrounded by a foreign culture, he has something that connects him to God. He's not inside a JCC, Jewish Community Center. He's not at a shul. He's not at a temple. He's not on Jewish land. He doesn't have anything that's connecting him to what you and I would call Israelite or Jewish identity, but he has this staff, and the staff has the association with God. So he takes hold of this element in his life, in his daily life, and he grasps it and he clutches it, and he says, in effect, whispering, I'm reading into his mind, I'm going back to Egypt and I'm going to stand firm with my people who need me. How powerful it is that a man who is in nowhere and it's got nothing decides to move forward. If only you and I could marshal that spiritual energy. Yes?
I have a question about the rod. A lot of people make objects to remind them about their relationship and their connection to God. Is a rod really necessary?
Question is from somebody here in the room, is a rod really necessary? The rod might be, and for the record, it doesn't belong to God necessarily, but when Moses has that encounter at the burning bush, God says, you're going to Egypt. And Moses says, I don't want to go to Egypt, I'm afraid. God says, what's that in your hand? He said, it's a rod, a walking staff. He said, okay, hold on to that. So the rod is something that is in the here and the now for Moses. And because God reminds Moses that God is with Moses, those moments of fear and vulnerability, which still are very present within Moses, become the lever. The moments of fear and vulnerability in Moses' life become the lever by which Moses can take hold and move forward. So he holds on to something in the here and the now. You and I might say our cell phone or car keys or a wallet or handbag or whatever it might be. What do we carry around with us normally? But it's something tangible that we say, I understand this. This is part of my daily life. And I'm willing to look inside myself and to place within myself faith. God believes in Moses. How often do you and I see that in this Torah reading? God believes in Moses. Well, let's take hold of that. God believes in you. God believes in you. In each and every one of us, God believes. So in those moments of fear, and I experience them as well, moments of uncertainty and confusion, and certainly the whole world is upside down these past 2 years. God believes in each one of us in his or her own way, the way each one of us is made up. How will you and I respond to that? And if we wanted to follow in Moses' footsteps, we'd respond by opening our ears and our eyes to people who are scared, suffering, upside down, and we would go out to meet them where they are and reach out to them and try to support them. There are different kinds of slavery in the modern world. God has faith in you, me, to reach out to somebody who's enslaved in some way and pull that person out of his slavery, his own enslavement. You and I can do that. We've been trained by the best. It's in the Torah. We read it every single year. The Haftorah that is attached to this, that's paired to this, is found on pages 343-345, and it's from Isaiah, and we're watching our clock, so I'm being a little brief here, but look at the last part of page 346. This is the Haftorah paired with this Torah reading. It's from the book of Isaiah. It's chapter 29. Lachen כה אמר אדוני אל בית יעקב אשר פדת אברהם לא אתה יבוש יעקב ולא אתה פניו יחברו כי בראתו ילדיו מעשה ידי בקרבו יקדישו שמי ויקדישו את קדוש יעקב ואלוהי ישראל יריצו. God said to the entire house of Jacob, God who redeemed Abraham said to the house of Jacob, no more shall Jacob be ashamed. No longer will Jacob's face grow pale. You will not be ashamed. You have confidence. You have strength. You have power. I, God, believe in you, O house of Jacob. That's what Isaiah is saying 2,700 years ago to your and my ancestors. So if Isaiah is saying to his people in his own day, do not be afraid, be confident. You belong to something much grander than your own understanding of who you are. You are essential to the operation of the universe because God has faith in you. Take hold of that message. And now 2,700 years later, I'm saying to all of us, we are part of something much grander than ourselves. We have the power to transform our reality. And God believes in each and every one of us. We are the household of Jacob. People will hallow the Holy One of Jacob and stand in awe of the God of Israel. God is the source of the ultimate meaning. And you and I can take hold of that. That's our message for today. So very current, so very contemporary. And our loved ones need our support. And we have family members and friends who are ill. And we recite the Mishaberach L'Cholim, the prayer for healing for our loved ones. And those here in the shul are invited to mention a name or two of people, and those joining in from home are also invited to mention the name of someone or someone's who are in need of our prayer and our love and our connection. For when we are reciting a prayer for healing, we're establishing a network of love, of shared identity between ourselves and everyone else. And that network of concern and love and kindness and compassion bridges this place in God. And all that energy is directed towards those in need. מי שברך אבותינו, אבי אבותינו סורף גרך ולך, הוא ברך רבי כל חולים, וכולל את ינטה בת גישה, חנסור בפשליה, אב מיודה בן גישה, אלליה בת אביבה, לקלודיה תומאס, רבן מאיר, ספרינצה בבאשי, מרים בבאשי, באשי בת ספרינצה, George Patinos, Wendy Fassman, Tom Bastoni, Avi Moshe ben Mendel Chana, Chana bat Meredith, Billy Singleton, Cherie Singleton, Yaakov ben Leora, Bruce Kahn, Diane Sizemore, Haim Fan, Zach McKiernan, Shirav Opat Sarimenu, David Shlomo ben Tovanachum, Anna Moret, Tovalea bat Freda, Tom McCarthy, Amelia Rose bat Amanda Jean, Diane Sizemore, וכולם שנזכרים היום, מהר שנזכרים, השכבר ולומר, Amen. Almighty God, as you have blessed our mothers and our fathers in generations long past, come forth now into this generation, into the lives of these people whom we remember with love. Bring forth your power, your majesty of healing and of strength. Stand by all who are infirm, afflicted, ill, and weakened, bringing forth strength and renewed energy and vitality. Soften the challenges that are before each and every one. Sustain them and lift them up. Tend them of spirit, of mind, and of body. Favor them with your closeness and your presence. Bring forth blessings and place those blessings within each and every one of our loved ones and all around each and every one of our loved ones. Establish this as a day of healing and of renewed strength, renewed energy. Watch over them as they move forward from this Shabbat into the days, weeks, months, and decades yet to be. Favor them with everything they need and more. And most importantly, place shalom all around them. And we all say, Amen. We rise. V'zot ha'torah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. Dundai, 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 dai. 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 Eretz Yisrael b'lei Torah hikego b'lei neshama. Eretz Yisrael b'lei Torah hikego b'lei neshama. Dundai, 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 dai. 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 On page 183, returning the Torah to their own. Yahalalu et Shem Adonai, ki niskav shmo levado, hodo al eretz v'shamayim, vayarem keren li'amo, tila lechol chasidav, livnei Yisrael am krovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Mizmor leDavid, Havul Adonai b'nei Elim, Havul Adonai Kavod Vos, Havul Adonai Kavod Shemo, Hishtachavul Adonai Badrat Kodesh, Kol Adonai Alamoyim Kavod Hirim, Adonai Almayim Rabim, Kol Adonai Ba'koach, Kol Adonai Behadar, Kol Adonai Shover Arazim, Vaishaber Adonai Et Arze Halbanon, Varkidim Kamo Egel Lebanon Misiryon, Kamo Ben Remim, Kol Adonai Chod Sev Lavotesh, Kol Adonai Yachil Midbar, Yachil Adonai Midbar Kadesh, Kol Adonai Yachol El Ayalot, Vayachasov Yarot, Uvechalo Kolo Amer Kavod, Adonai Lamabul Yashav, Vayeshev Adonai Melech Leolam, Adonai Oz Liam Oyitain, Adonai Yavarech Et Amo Vashalom, Uvnucho Yomar. On page 184. The last three lines at the top of the page. Etz Chaim hi lemachazikim ba v'tom cheha meushar deracheha darchen olam v'chol netivoteha shalom Hashivenu Adonai Elecha V'nashuvam Charesh Charesh Yameinu Charesh Yameinu Kekedem. Remaining standing, turning to page 189. Page 189. This is inside the Musaf. We haven't sung Musaf in a while. But today we need an additional prayer. It's Yismechu. It's the top of page 189. Yismechu v'malachutecha shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei onek Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei onek Shabbat. Mekadeshei Shevi Shabbat Kulam Yisbu V'yit Angu mitu v'cha Shabbat Yismechu v'malachutecha Shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei onek Shabbat Yismechu v'malachutecha Shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei onek Shabbat V'hashvi ratzita bo v'kidashto Shabbat chemdat yamim Oto karata Shabbat Yismechu v'malachutecha Shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei onek Shabbat Yismechu v'malachutecha Shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei onek Shabbat Zecher L'maseh L'maseh v'reshit Shabbat. Zecher l'maseh v'reishit Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha shomrei Shabbat v'korei onek Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha shomrei Shabbat v'korei onek Shabbat. Page 191, the concluding bracha of the Musaf is Sim Shalom. Oh God, put shalom into the world. Put goodness and blessing into the world. Put chen, watchfulness and protection, and chesed, loving kindness, and rachamim, compassion, into the world. Sim shalom tova uvracha. Sim shalom tova uvracha. Chain v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael amecha. Borcheinu avinu kulanu ke'echad b'yor panecha. Yadadadadadai. Sim shalom. Sim shalom tova uvracha. Sim shalom tova uvracha. Kivior panecha natata lanu Adonai Eloheinu Torat chayim ve'ahavas chesed u'tzedakah uvracha v'rachamim v'chayim v'shalom. Yadadadadadai. Sim shalom tova uvracha. Sim shalom tova uvracha. V'tov be'enecha lavarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol eit u'b'chol shalom b'shlomecha. Yadadadadadai. Sim shalom tova uvracha. Sim shalom tova uvracha. We need shalom in the world. And each one of us has that opportunity to assist God by bringing chen, loving kindness, chesed, kindness, rachamim, compassion, into the world. Page 204, Ein Kelo, followed by the Aleinu, remaining standing. Page 204. Ein Keloheinu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kemalkeinu, Ein Kemoshienu, Mich Eloheinu, Mich Adonenu, Mich Emalkeinu, Mich Moshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Emalkeinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu, Atahu Sheketiru, Avotenu, Lefanecha, Et Ktoret Hasamim. On page 205, Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol latet gedula liotzer breshit shelo asanu kugoye haratzot velo samanu kimishpachot adama shelo sam chelkenu kahem v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam v'anachnu korim umishtachavim Umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlochim hakadosh baruch hu shehu noteh shamayim v'yosed haaretz umoshav yikaro b'shamayim mimald ushchinatu zo begavei meromim hu Eloheinu ein od emet malkeinu evezulato, kakatu b'torato, v'yodata ayom v'ashevota elevavecha, ki Adonai hu Elohim, b'shamayim mimol, v'al haaretz, mitachat enod. Kakatu b'toratecha, Adonai yimloch le'olam v'ed, v'ne'emar v'haya Adonai le'melech al kol haaretz, bayom hahu, yihyeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad. In a moment, Mourner's Kaddish. And Kaddish is before us on page 207. We remember with great love, and we extend our concern and our hope to all those who are remembering Jacob Camille, Jenny Weber, Joseph Cohen, Larry Fernay, Rosa Gerhardt, Cheryl Chasson, Rhoda Herzog, Molly Kahn, Marcia Roberts, Reverend Morris Klarman, Bernie Malkov, Morris Olinsky, Jacob Kramer, Joe Lava, Ralph Weed, Howard Malkov, Herman Collette, Fanny Silverstein, Samuel Leventhal, Bernice Davidoff. Are there any names to add today? And perhaps those joining in at home have a name to mention or more. And if you're at home and you're saying Kaddish, you're invited to rise at this time. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. Amen. Be'olma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chaye chon u'v'yomei chon u'v'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imeru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach la'olam ul olmei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemed kudusha b'richu la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran ba'alma v'meru. Amen. Yehei shlama Rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'meru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'meru. Amen. Aleinu means upon us. Al kol Yisrael means upon all of Israel. So there's this closeness between the us and everyone. And we say that twice. In the last two lines of the Kaddish, Yesh Shalom and Oseh Shalom, we recognize there are those amongst us who are mourning, grieving, in need of support. And we pray for shalom, and we want to show shalom to those. But that's only step one. Step one is to think not only of those here in our immediate circle, but to go on beyond out into the world. And Jewish people all over the world are thinking about they and theirs in their own immediate circle, but also going beyond their immediate circle and thinking of us as well. Whether you're in Europe or Asia or Africa or Mobile, Alabama and beyond, Jewish people are praying for you, and you become an agent for peace and prayer for others. That's our response to grief. That's our response to sorrow and loss. To think of others and to go beyond. In case you've forgotten, we have Zoom Havdalah tonight at 7, and we have talented singers and guitar players and cantors joining us. That's 7 o'clock tonight, Havdalah, and Monday is Tanakh study on Zoom, and Tuesday is Adult Hebrew on Zoom with Spirit. Adult Hebrew is 3 to 3:45 on Zoom. We're almost finished with our book, and those that have been joining us on Zoom are getting close to mastering the Erev Shabbat, the Kabbalat Shabbat, the Friday evening service. But it's going to remain on YouTube, and so people can join in at their own leisure and learn how to read Hebrew slowly, relaxedly, comfortably, and within a span of a few months, they'll be fully equipped to handle the entire Friday evening service. That's our Zoom Hebrew, and that's, again, Tuesday, 3 to 3:45. Tuesday, a spirit topic is on 5 o'clock, spirit discussion. And that's it for right now. Something a little bit different. Anim Zemirot. We're on page 208. I feel like singing a little bit today. Anim Zemirot is a well-known song, tradition, and the element is, if you were to paint a picture of God, which paints would you use, which brushes would you use? If you were to sing or talk about God, which words would you use? Anim Zemirot. You're asked to rise, and we'll make Kiddush and Hamotzi afterwards. Anim Zemirot v'shirim erog ki elecha nafshi tarog nafshi chamda b'tzel yodecha ladat kol ros sodecha midei dabre bechodecha homer libi el dodecha al ken adaber b'cha nichbadot v'shimcha achabed b'shirei yedidot asapra chavodcha v'lo re'iticha adamcha achancha v'lo yidaticha biad neviecha b'sod avadecha dimita hadar kavododecha gedulatcha gvoratecha kinu letokef pulatecha dimuotcha v'lo kafiyeshcha vayash vucha lefimasecha himshilucha barov chezyonot hincha echad b'chol dimyonot vayechazu v'cha zikna uvacharut us aroshcha b'seva v'shacharut zikna b'yom din uvacharut b'yom krav keish milchamot yadav lo rav chavash kova Yeshua b'rosho Hoshia lo yiminos roa kodsho talale orot rosho nimla kavutzotav rusise laila yitpaer bi ki chafetz bi vuyiyeli teret tzvi ketem tahor paz demut rosho v'chakal meitza kavod shem kadsho lechen ol chavod tzvi tifara umatalo itra atara machlafot rosho kavime v'churot kavutzotav taltalim shechorot nevei hatzedek tzvi tif arto yale na al rosh simchato segulato tivyado ateret utsnif mlucha tzvi tiferet Amusim nesam ateret indam measher yakru v'einav kibdam Pharaoh Allah Pharaoh Allah v'karov Eli b'kori Elav tzach ve'adam levusho adam pura v'dorcha mavo me'adam keshet tefillin hera la'anav tmunat arana l'neged einav rotze v'amim anem v'mir fa'er yoshev tehilot bamlit ba'er to 10 Rosh devorcha emet kore me rosh. Dor vador amdo rosh kadeh rosh. Shit hamon shirayin alecha. Vrina titikra velecha. Tilati til rosh chateret utfilati. Tikon ketoret. Tikashirat rosh beinecha. Kasher yushar al karbanecha virchati talel rosh mashbir mecholel molid tzadik kabir virchati tanan ali rosh vyota kachla kisamim rosh yerav no sichi alecha binavshi taragelecha yerav no sichi alecha kinavshi taragelecha lecha Adonai hagadula vagvura vativer vanetzavahod ki Chol b'shamayim uvaretz lecha Adonai hamamlacha v'minaseh lechol rosh v'minaseh lechol rosh mi'maleh gvurot Adonai yashmiya kol tilato. Now let's make Kiddush. Kiddush and Motzi. If you're joining in at home, I hope you have a glass of wine or juice and a piece of bread, and we can say Kiddush and Motzi together. And those here in the shul have Kiddush and we have wine and grape juice and challah in the back of the room. And so we can make Kiddush and Motzi together. Kiddush means sanctification. And by lifting up a glass of wine or grape juice, by having a piece of bread, with the intention of transforming our reality, you bring holiness into your own space. Your own table becomes elevated. So Kiddush, wine or grape juice. V'shamaro v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat L'dorot amrit olam Beini ovein b'nei Yisrael Lo tili olam Ki sheishet yamim asa Adonai Et ha-shamayim v'et haaretz Uvayom hashvi Shabbat v'inafash Al ken berach Adonai et yom ha-Shabbat v'ikadshehu. Therefore, God blessed the seventh day and made it holy. And you and I, with our focus, our mind, and our heart, make time holy as well. Sabre Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. And for a bit of motzi, you know that for 3,000 years we've been washing our hands to prepare ourselves for holding a piece of bread. Bread is the ultimate gift. And this is an element that has been handed down from the days of the Kohanim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvos v'tzivono al tilas shadoyim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for bringing Shabbat from your home into ours, and for letting us bring Shabbat from shul into your home. We look forward to seeing each other hopefully soon in person, hopefully. Reminders that all are welcome, vaccinated and masked. We do have social distancing, but we're in the big shul, so we hope that you start coming to shul and feeling more comfortable coming back to shul. And until we see each other again, may God always bless you. Litrot.